Should we just forgive and forget, or should accountability be demanded? And by demanded, should justice actually, or let's just put it this way here, should justice be actually pursued?
Final thought about this. This weaponization of our great institutions, the FBI, Justice Department.
We're in the dystopian nightmare, good sir. We're currently living it.
Before I get started, I want to say two very, very quick things. Number one, this video right here is being put out later on tonight, right around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, maybe 7. It all depends on how long the YouTube algorithm takes to actually post it. The algorithm has really been beating me up a lot over the past 2 weeks. It ebbs and flows. You go up, you go down, and obviously as you post, you're hoping that it would obviously go up, but still at the same time, no complaints here at all. You guys know me, chin down, hands up, just keep going forward. Number two, there's going to be a lot of cuts from Dr. Phil's monologue that he had on this very topic of weaponization of the government. Now, the thing about Dr. Phil is this here, and I'm not complaining about Dr. Phil the person. I'm talking about the actual network, the show, and all that type of stuff there, not say the show itself, but how it is that for whatever reason, Dr. Phil, you can't just play some of the things he says without actually having a header or something placed inside the clip itself. A lot of it's got to do with the copyright scheme here on YouTube. And of course, the last two videos that I've released that would have gotten me any type of money at all, for whatever reason, they mysteriously got copyright claimed, which, by the way, I did everything you would need to do to make the video transformative. Of course, that right there is another topic for another day, but let's go ahead and get into this. So the topic of accountability, and should if the current Republican nominee, Donald Trump, get back into office, should he actually pursue anything? Should he actually pursue the liberals who tried to lock him up? Well, let me go ahead and say this. One of the narratives that's being baked in by the mainstream media is that he's going to arrest us all if we don't beat him. That doesn't make any sense. You right now are trying to arrest the guy. You right now are trying to lock him up. You right now at the exact same time have gone after Catholics, pro-life groups. I also remember back in 2013, 2014 when the IRS was ordered to, I say order because we all know what the hell really and truly happened. They were ordered to audit Tea Party groups, pro-life groups, all that type of stuff there. So the question then becomes, and by the way, there's a lot more that definitely does need to be held accountable. Hunter Biden right now sitting inside of a courtroom. He needs to be held accountable. Of course, these people made up a bunch of charges and put them on the former president. A case that, by the way, was not going to make it in the federal system. So I guess, as you guys already know, the FEC would not actually try that case. And also the Department of Justice also did not want to pursue the Stormy Daniels issue as well. And like I said before in previous videos, we all knew that he was going to get a conviction. I mean, it's very, very liberal New York. But then you look at the Georgia case and you see that one's falling apart. You look at the Mar-a-Lago documents case and you see that one's falling apart, and you wonder maybe justice is already on its way. But is that enough? Is vindication of a candidate, getting back the Oval Office, getting back the legislative body, is that enough? Should there be some form of accountability? Well, before I get to Dr. Phil, I want to go ahead and say this. And I want to go ahead and say this and make this point perfectly clear. I am the type of person that believes that accountability obviously does need to be reached in this situation. I remember after COVID, I remember that liberals, especially the online sippy cup types that, I say sippy cup types because that right there is pretty much what the soy latte is nowadays. It's just a good old-fashioned sippy cup because they got their mouth around all the time like a baby, and they also act like babies too. You had a lot of people out there tweeting that this little situation is over with. Can we get back together now that Trump is out of office? Crap like that there. And I remember how these people acted. I remember how some of these people absolutely went out of their way to slander the other side. I remember one such case where Senator Ted Cruz was, let's just say that he got into it with Carrie Elways, the actor who played, the famous actor for the film The Princess Bride. I didn't really care that much for the film. I know a lot of girls love that film. The film that I remember Carrie Elways the most from is Robin Hood Men in Tights, and of course the first Hot Shots movie. A lot of parodies made this guy was starred in. But he got into it over an autograph, and Ted Cruz said something to the degree of, well, do you want the autograph back? Do you want me to send it back to you? That's kind of how divided we were getting as a nation. And, of course, you even had people like Alyssa Milano and them saying, look, are we even now? Are we even now? No. People like you put us through all kinds of hell the entire time Trump was in office. You still are putting us through hell. You're still attacking us. I mean, this was just the online world. This was just the everyday world that you run into with people who disagree with you on politics. That's how bad it's actually gotten. However, the point then becomes, though, what about the politicians and the people who actually enacted or enabled these people to do these types of things? Should they be held accountable? Well, let me say this right quick before I get into this, before I really and truly get into this. Your next door neighbor, the person that you disagree with politically, you can just walk away from, or you can have a conversation. I mean, it's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do. It's completely up to you. I remember when this nation was united after 9/11. I missed that feeling, but I also remember how quickly it began to devolve over the topic of Iraq right after we invaded. Say what you want to. Your opinion is your opinion. I'm not going to attack you for how you feel about that war. But the thing is this right here, especially coming from me, an actual veteran of that conflict, but still the point is this right here. Little tiny disagreements, whatnot, we can get over as a society. I mean, I'm pretty sure that society eventually would heal itself. I mean, you obviously remember people going through a certain phase, but at the same time, though, when you see tweets about the verdict saying anybody who defends this verdict is actually a threat to you and your family, that right there is actually, in a lot of ways, something you might want to pay attention to. But at the end of the day, it's still up to you. The question is the people who work for the government, the people who have been used in this weaponization of our government, the weaponization of our Department of Justice, the judges, the people who actually, let's just say, make the laws and carry out the laws, should they be held accountable? Well, let's go ahead and look at this.
To demand from your politicians today an end to this craziness in order to save the soul and sanity of our country. The Pope has actually given us the right approach in his new book when he says, we are all brothers and sisters, and there must be no resentment among us. For any war to truly end, forgiveness is necessary. That is true of any war, including our current cultural war. We need our Justice Department to return to the business of meting out justice and not running the political agendas of those currently in power, blindly seeking convictions, warranted or otherwise, and attacking political opponents. That requires a very few important things from each of you, from all of us. Finding your voice, forgiveness, and focus on the way forward. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgiveness, and at the same time requiring better.
We are brothers and sisters. We are. However, right now, you've got one set of brothers who is going out of their way to prosecute and persecute their other brothers. And they've been doing so for a while. I mean, look, they've locked up Peter Navarro for basically sticking up for the American worker. They're ordering Steve Bannon to prison just for being in contempt of court. I mean, my God, the cases against Trump himself, the fact that they've gone after pro-life groups, they've gone after anybody and everybody who just simply doesn't exactly agree with the narrative. I mean, it feels like maybe we're a communist country. So, yes, I think it's pretty daggone obvious at this point in time that should the next administration or should Trump get back into office, he should, in fact, go after these people. The thing that bothers me is the actual timing, which I'll get to a little bit later because, and you'll hear me say this again, the Biden administration has saddled us with so much crap that it may take a while for us to actually be able to get to it because we got a border crisis. We've got 3 wars going on around the world, which you'll hear me mention here again. You could argue maybe 4 due to what's going on between Venezuela and Guyana, the saber rattling there. Yeah, we've got a lot of crap going on, but let's get back to it. Okay, forgive them for they know not what they do. Now, really quick, let me say this. I'm a Christian, and obviously I remember that they were the final words of Christ. Well, actually, they weren't the final words. The final words was, it is done. And then, of course, he died, and he resurrected 3 days later. And then roughly, I think it was 45 days. If you're better versed on the Bible and you think I'm getting something wrong here, please tell me. I want to say it was 45 days later he actually ascended after he resurrected. The thing is this right here. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. I would be inclined to agree with that, for the exception there's one problem. There's one very, very big problem. They've been doing this for close to 10 years now. In a lot of ways, Dr. Phil, they've actually been doing this a lot longer than that. You see, I noticed that this current set of liberals that we've been dealing with, and of course I started getting into this back in before 2012, I noticed the smugness. I noticed the arrogance. I noticed the everything along. I mean, I noticed all this stuff really going back 12, 15 years. And I just think it's gotten to the point to where it's out of control on the other side. Some people have even cited that they believe that this is actually America under demon possession. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole or anything like that. I'm just simply saying that I think at this moment in time, I think we have to really and truly examine what you're talking about when you mean they know not what they do. In the case of Christ's crucifixion, everybody was throwing things at Christ as he was on that cross. And that right there, of course, was Jesus saying they know not what they do because they were doing it in the moment. However, these people right here have been doing it for a lot longer. Like I said before, your next door neighbor, the person who disagrees with you can agree to disagree and just move on. If it gets to the point where you can't work with them, you can just walk away with them, or you just walk away from them. I mean, unless, of course, they're affecting your work and your family life or whatnot, I just wouldn't pay them no mind. Matter of fact, I actually would just laugh at these people. Eventually, they'll come out of their face at some point in time. But the politicians, the people in the mainstream media, the people who, quite frankly, are pitching the narrative, do we actually forgive them? Let's watch a little bit more before we come to our conclusion.
They do. Forgiveness and at the same time requiring better. We are not some banana republic, for God's sakes. What are we going to do next? Have a Putin poisoning posse? And start finding political opponents foaming at the mouth at home, not so mysteriously dying in their lazy boy recliners? We're better than that. We must be better than that. I don't like what I see happening in our country. This kind of thing is exactly why I launched Merit Street Media and wrote We've Got Issues. I don't like seeing the weaponization of our justice system, agencies, and powerful government actions that, frankly, just make my skin crawl for all of us and for my grandchildren. And let's be honest, this is so not just about Trump. If you let your hatred for Donald Trump compromise your ability to...
Correct. Very, very correct. Which brings me back to what Tim Pool was saying about this issue when he actually reacted to it. Now, I'll play a little bit of that here in a second, and then the second clip I have. But I got to go ahead and say this. The discontent for Trump, and let me go ahead and say this right here as somebody who actually had some issues with Trump back in 2016. I've said this on several occasions. Donald Trump was not my first choice for president. I actually thought it was a joke. I actually thought his intention was to become the Republican nominee so that way his former friend Hillary Clinton could then be, I guess you could say, elected in the easiest way possible. We used to sit there and have discussions about this after the 2012 election. Would Hillary Clinton get elected? And of course, I told people at that time, we used to kick this thing around, and I said that I didn't think Hillary Clinton had a chance in reality because Benghazi had drug her down so much. And then to go on top of that, it was kind of already baked in everybody's minds that she was going to be president. But the problem is that she had this very bad lecturing tone that she could very easily be beaten, all the scandals, the emails, everything that was coming out before Trump even got involved. And then to go on top of that the Republican bench was pretty daggone stacked. However, it didn't stop people like Ben Shapiro and people on the right saying, we're not going to vote for Donald Trump. Glenn Beck also did that too. I almost fell into that exact same camp. I ultimately decided to go vote for Donald Trump because I realized he was the only shot we had to avoid that wretched witch. But also to go on top of that, going back to the discussions I had post-2012 with classmates, was that the problem is that we have this thing with dynasties. We have this thing with issues. We have this thing with dynasties. And I did not think the country was ready for a woman president. I ended up actually being correct. I think if you run the 2016 presidential election back, I actually think that any of the other GOP candidates, except maybe Jeb and George Pataki, people who announced that didn't make them. I'm talking about the primary four that were left at the very, very end. Rubio, Cruz, Kasich. I really, truly think that any one of those could have actually taken Hillary out. Just saying. But it had to be Trump. It had to be Trump. And I think that right there really bothers these people because they normally go back and they try to make whatever cope they can, like he's a game show host. He was not a successful businessman. The guy took $1 million, turned it to $1 billion. He basically remade all of New York City's skylines. He basically worked on a lot of hotels, got them completely redesigned, built his own organization, his own brand. Yes, he's had bankruptcies, but he's also made a lot of money post-bankruptcy, and he's also still listed as a top 50 billionaire right now in the world, as a matter of fact. At this point in time, in the actual world, Forbes released a document recently after that Truth Social going public. The point is this right here. Most of these attacks that they throw at the former president are mostly done in the fact that it's a coping mechanism. They know that at one point in time, his businesses, his real estate industry was through the roof. They know exactly how big of a name he was back in the late 70s, 80s, and even 90s. When he did The Apprentice at the time, he was already famous for being Donald Trump. I mean, everybody knew who the hell Donald Trump was. So for the most part, most of the attacks on him are just good old-fashioned cope. But then it comes down to people who actually attack and physically attack other ones because of their freaking political disbelief or political disagreements. Let me play this Tim Pool segment first, and I think I'll come back around the other side and clarify a little bit more.
Donald Trump wants revenge against those who have wronged him. Finally, we might get someone who tells a DOJ to criminally investigate people who are visible criminals and then charge them. So far, we got what? A guy who altered an email because we knew that in the Russiagate hoax, FBI lawyer. What about Hillary Clinton's destruction of public records? BleachBit, paying for the Steele dossier? How about the classified documents of all the other presidents? All of those criminal. You want to say Trump shouldn't be charged with classified documents? Fine. Then I'll put it this way. You don't charge the other guys, but you do charge him, right? It's one or the other. We are in the dystopian nightmare, good sir. We're currently living it. Republicans are not engaging in a tit for tat. They're not even going after the legitimate crimes we know about. Democrats are falsely charging people left and right, locking people up in solitary for years in the J6 cases. Revenge. I get it. Revenge doesn't solve things. But in this instance, I believe that appropriate revenge for Donald Trump would accomplish justice and accountability for the rest of us. That is, Donald Trump wants revenge against those who have wronged. Dr. Phil, weaponized the government, be removed from public positions and barred from working ever again in these places. Anyone who worked for them, anyone who supported them, I don't care if they printed out a piece of paper that they asked for, they're all fired and gone. Personally, I'd be satisfied. If it can get the likes of Dr. Phil on board and it moves forward this country, I'd be willing to accept excising from political and public life those individuals who corrupted our system.
Before we start talking about lower level people and people not being allowed back in government for the rest of their life, I got to tell you this. I could be on board with that, these people not being allowed to have any type of public office, but I think I would go a step further. Investigate them all the way. Investigate them the exact same way that they investigated Trump. Shame them the exact same way. If we find out, like we're finding out about Adam Schiff's secretary when he used to help kids out, that they were doing some pretty nefarious crap, they need to be locked up. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of Washington, D.C. itself needs to be locked up. I mean, you can't just have them not being able to go back to work or not be able to work in that field. They'll find work elsewhere. Take a look at John Brennan and James Clapper. What do they do now? Well, they still have their security clearance. Trump could have revoked that. I have no idea why he didn't do it. But they still have their security clearance, and they can actually go out and lecture, even if they lose their job, their contract with the military-industrial complex, companies like Lockheed Martin, which, like I said before, you guys know me. I'm not against the military-industrial complex. I'm against who the hell is running and how it's being used. But still, the point is right here. These people still can actually function in society some way as far as in public life and teach and whatnot. But also at the same time, they're teaching that extreme negativity stuff to another whole generation of men and women. I think that people like that, with their crimes that are there, they need to be investigated, and they do need to be locked up if crimes are actually found and actually convicted. So yes, I do, in fact, agree with accountability, but let's keep going.
North on your moral compass, shame on you. If you let your disgust for Biden make you blind to the inevitable consequences of pursuing revenge, then God help the children who will inherit the dystopian nightmare we create. We need leaders who will pledge to end this vicious cycle right now and return us to that safe place where our institutions are no longer bastardized and weaponized, but rather simply serve their intended purpose. We have serious problems to solve, and it will take serious people to solve them. Men and women who we hold accountable for doing that which they were selected or hired to do. They need to know we are watching, and their positions are privileges, not legacies.
Now, really quick, before I get to my final point, and I didn't want this video to be that long, but I want to go ahead and say this. I'm not shaming Dr. Phil in any way, shape, or form. I actually like Dr. Phil. But as he said in the beginning, he's not into politics. He really and truly is not. And what I would say to someone like, say, Tim Pool, is that most people don't really keep up with this stuff the way you would think. Like someone like me, for example. Most people, for the most part, what they would like to do is they would like to be able to have enough money in their pocket to take care of their family, take care of their to take care of their actual business, maybe start a business, have enough freedom, or actually have their freedom to be able to do that. Most people aren't even aware of what the hell is really and truly going on in this country. Now, people are definitely getting a lot smarter, and people are definitely getting a lot more involved. And I'm glad to see someone like Dr. Phil, who's always been pretty daggone level-headed, get involved. But when he says, I'm not really actually into politics, it doesn't mean he's probably never voted. He probably voted in 2020 for Joe Biden. He just didn't realize how bad it was. It goes back to the whole anti-COVID vote and what the hell was going on in 2020. And now they've opened their eyes and they're like, holy crap, what the hell is going on here? Dr. Phil, by the way, has interviewed. He did an hour-long interview with Trump, which I haven't actually looked at or reviewed yet. And I really didn't want to take this week to talk about politics and politics alone, because I know that talking about politics is not exactly the thing that this channel is really about. It's really more about the culture war. But of course, politics is downstream from the culture itself. But still, I wanted to discuss this because I think it's very, very important that we have a conversation, at least give you guys my thoughts on what I think should happen.
Control in our lives and turn this ship of state called America in the right direction and get her back on track so we can be proud. That's my mission, and this is a call to action to save our collective soul and sanity. This is also a call to redemption, healing, and forgiveness that leads to peace among us all, which is the most important gift we can share in our dangerous world. The current administration could and should do the right thing. Dismiss now, even now, post-conviction of a political opponent, all such lawfare, and pledge to return to the normal functioning of a government rightly run. God bless you all, and God bless these United.
Okay, now in a second, you're going to hear me say that the Biden administration has really created so much chaos that going for accountability at this moment in time may be a bit of a problem, but bear with me for a second, because you're also going to hear me say that most normal people, especially those who are not online, don't keep up with this. And I mean, when I say this, I mean this type of stuff that's going on in our country itself. For Dr. Phil to come out and say he does not like this, and he's actually bringing this up, he's not even really a political guy. That says a lot. It also tells me that a lot more people who are not normally politically involved are getting involved. But I can also tell you right now that a lot of people in 2020 that were not politically active still voted for Biden due to the fact that there was COVID going on at the time. And of course, they felt like they were living in a communist nation. Of course, I blame mostly the state governors for that, especially the blue state governors. But still, there were also purple state governors who also participated in the lockdowns as well, and even some red state governors like my home state here, which we have a Democrat governor, which for whatever reason, he didn't have a brain. Same thing with Andy Beshear in Kentucky. But I need to say this right here before we go any further. The Biden administration has put us in so much crap that going for retribution to start things off with may actually be counterproductive in the early days. I'm not saying I'm against accountability. You guys already heard my opinion on this. I feel that accountability needs to be sought. The question, however, is timing. I personally would like to see Trump get in office, undo all the executive orders, close the border back up, meet with the House, the Senate, go ahead and get a legislative package to go ahead and get the price of gas down, meaning that you need to go ahead and invest in energy. We need to go ahead and rework the tax code, rework the entitlement system, and we need to go ahead and sign some serious, honest-to-God reforms to get the country on track. And then he needs to focus on not only the border, but he also needs to focus on what's going on with our military and start a great big giant recruitment drive. And then from there, we need to work on the economy itself. After all that right there is done, and after everything is kind of squared away to kind of get us out of the small little nightmare that we're in, then we need to go ahead and start going for accountability. But at the same time, though, I also know that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. It'd be very interesting to see exactly how that happens. But the point is where most people who are not online really and truly are not keeping up with this. But here's what I wanted to focus on to end this video. The dystopian nightmare that we're in now was created in reality by both parties. The Republican Party is feckless, it's weak. It wasn't until Trump came around that it began to get its balls back. The Democratic Party, as we know, is completely and totally evil. However, the uniparty establishment is in fact dying. And I've already said this in this video, and I'll say it once again. Accountability does in fact need to be sought. However, I do want to see us, and of course I know we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and it's going to be very interesting to see how we do it. But I do want us as a nation to be able to hold these people accountable. And I don't just mean keep them out of public life and not have them around. If we keep them out of public life and keep them from getting a job or working in an institution, that doesn't mean they won't go somewhere else and corrupt the hell out of their society and corrupt the rest of the world. It might come back and these people need to be out. They need to be investigated. And of course, if there are any actual crimes, they need to be tried and they need to be convicted for those crimes and they need to be locked away. In some cases, even a little bit further than that. But I'm not going to get in that rabbit hole here. Basically, the point is this right here. I understand exactly 100% what Dr. Phil is saying. I agree with a lot what he has to say. But we can't really and truly heal until we actually put the people who are dividing and hurting the nation away. That right there is basically what I'm saying. And I understand why Dr. Phil feels the way he does. And like I said, this right here is not a video designed to rag Dr. Phil. I'm just saying that healing is what we all want. But we also need that accountability too. You guys tell me what you think in the comment section. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.